For the past few months, I've been living a bit of a double life, because on top of the big box bikes that I normally ride, I've also been enjoying a bike that's quite a bit more expensive. This is the Cannondale Trigger 3 Carbon, and the Trigger 3 will set you back about $4,000. And in its factory form, it comes loaded with what I believe is one of the best values per component ratios of any bike in its class. But this isn't just any Cannondale Trigger 3, because this one has some upgrades. All dealer installed right off the showroom floor. This one has an upgraded wheel set, better shifters, carbon handlebars, a new stem, upgraded brakes and brake levers, and an upgraded dropper post. To roll this Trigger 3 out the bike shop doors, the price jumps from the original $4,000 to well over $6,300. So let's look at the component swaps that make that price happen. First, take off the Cannondale C3 alloy bars and switch those for some ANVL Mandrel 35 carbon bars. These are super light and super beefy at 35 millimeters in diameter, and I hope that helps alleviate my natural fear of carbon bars. I like the textured mount areas, and I suspect you get touches like that for $179. 35 millimeters in diameter means you're going to need a different stem, so how about an ANVL Swage 50 millimeter stem, in orange of course. But keep what works, like the Cannondale locking grips. This bar setup is super wide, it's 790 millimeters, and I plan on cutting that down to 760, but we'll see how it goes. I probably don't need to mention this is a tapered headset, but some of my viewers have firm opinions about headset types, so here it is. In the specs, you saw that this had a Fox Float 34 Performance air fork, and it's a sight to behold with all its boostiness and 150 millimeters of travel. I'll go ahead and make a bit of a spoiler here, but this is a great fork. Though I am curious why for $4,000 I didn't get a remote lockout. I don't know, maybe they don't come on bikes in this price range. You don't get pedals, so maybe you don't get a lockout. Perhaps someone can comment below and let me know if a remote lockout is common or not. I already mentioned the wheels were upgraded. The Trigger 3 comes with 27.5 inch WTB Frequency I-29 Race alloy wheels. Wow, that's a mouthful. It's a nice wheel set and I look forward to using it on some other bikes, but the Trigger 3 is begging for carbon wheels. And $1,500 will get you a Roval Traverse ST wheel set. Super lightweight and super good looking. The wheel set changed, but there's no reason to change the tires, as the Maxxis Minions with their tubeless configuration, these have some bite to them. Let's go back to those specs for a second and look at the frame, because there's lots here, and you can read the full details, but let me give you the summary of it. This is a Cannondale Ballistec carbon frame with alloy swing arm. Cannondale was among the pioneers of carbon frame technology, and their Ballistec carbon is supposed to be top notch. And at the center of that frame is a Fox Float Performance Evol rear shock. Now this shock is switchable. It has two modes. One is called Hustle, that's 115 millimeters of travel, and the other is Flow, the full 145. You can switch between the two using the Gemini remote. The shock link is aptly named the Cannondale Carbon Shock Link. And there are pivot points galore to ensure you get all 145 millimeters of movement. No pedals out the door, so race face chesters have been added, and those are fit to Cannondale SI crank arms. And the single chain ring is a Spider Ring 30-tooth. And all that connects via the Shimano chain to the Shimano XT 11-speed rear setup with an 11 to 46 tooth range. The rear derailleur is also a Shimano XT with Shadow Plus technology. Even though everything in the drivetrain is Shimano XT, the shifters, the originals anyway, are Shimano SLX. For the sake of continuity and to move more quickly through the gears, that's been changed to a matching Shimano XT shifter. And no doubt you've spotted that those brake levers aren't the factory-equipped SLX. Nope, XT there as well as the brakes themselves, including XT Ice Technologies rotors. What about the seat post? It originally came with a Trans-X dropper, but we want parity, right? That was switched for a Fox transfer dropper with a wolf tooth remote. And that's how the wolf sticker got on the frame. I think it looks great. Another was added to the Synchros fork fender. I've never been one for dressing up my mountain bikes, but in my opinion the stickers look good, and so do the mountain style frame guards. They were added for protection, but I think they fit perfectly with the bike. Carbon fiber is tough, but rocks can fly up and do damage, and that's where these stickers come in. But Cannondale did give some factory protection in the most critical area. There's a factory carbon fiber skin that goes over the bottom of the down tube towards the bottom bracket. So there's the rundown. Over $6,300 worth of upgraded carbon fiber mountain bike goodness, with its hustle and flow modes just begging to be ridden. I've ridden this bike already multiple times on the same trails that I regularly ride with some of my upgraded big box bikes, and I mention that specifically for those of you that have left comments stating that my upgraded big box bike opinions are invalid because I haven't ridden anything better. That's an inaccurate analysis. Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean I haven't ridden it. Not only have I ridden this bike on these trails, I've ridden a giant Trance that was $5,500 and a Trek Fuel EX8. I don't own those other bikes, but I've still been on them, so I know what their experience is like, and they're all great bikes in my opinion. And yes, all those bikes are smoother and more responsive than any of my big box bikes or any of my other bikes. But I'm not going to get into that on this video. I'll do a dedicated video on that, going through what someone on a big box bike is missing or not. But the Trigger 3 for itself, it's definitely a nice experience, albeit a bike that's capable of doing things that are far above what my riding style and risk aversion will ever put it through. Which is another factor that needs to be considered before dumping this much money into a bike, but I'll talk about that in the other video as well. But let me be clear, this is a superior riding experience, and it didn't take long before I was riding ever so slightly more aggressive with the Trigger than I normally do, and I think some of that is because of the speed that I can build up easily. Normally on this section of Wildwood, there's so much vibration that my vision actually rattles and I can't really focus, I just have to ride it out. On the Trigger 3, those rattles go away and turn into surface variations that I can actually feel on the trail. And that's probably why I can go faster, because there's a sense of more control because I can feel everything in a smooth sort of way. There's so much more about this that I want to relay, like the nuances of controllability and the overall optimization of power, but it's hard to get that across in a video. The best way I can explain it is that usually with the bikes you regularly see on my channel, I can ride all these same trails and I can have fun. The Trigger 3 almost tells me what it needs, like a symbiotic relationship, and there's this feeling of unlimited traction, but that can easily be a double-edged sword because you can get overconfident. But the overall sum of the experience is that I can have more fun because I can push it a little further. Now the amount of fun has to balance with what you're spending, so that's a tightrope. Better doesn't have to be more expensive, but with the Trigger 3 it wasn't until I was filming the drop test that I realized why it felt so controllable, and that's because it keeps itself on the ground. You'll see that in a minute, but it explains the awareness of surface variations that I was talking about earlier. My time on this bike thus far has without question been the best overall experience that I've ever had on these trails. And I'm still awkward with the whole hustle and flow settings. I know when I'm in one versus the other, but I keep forgetting to change them. And I also forget I have a dropper post that I can use. What I can't get used to is sticks and rocks banging against my $6,300 plus bike.
Thank God for that. And that's why you have the protector.
Even though this bike is amazing, it's strengthened my resolve against those that say you need a $3,000 plus bike just to ride on the same trails that I can have fun on with any of my other bikes. That said, if you want to get into mountain biking or want to upgrade your mountain bike and you have the money to spend, this is definitely worth it in my opinion. And it's also taught me a bit, like these super wide bars. Initially I was going to cut them down, I think I may leave them as is for a while. For me, this experience has been great, and I've loved to see what's possible when you spend the extra coin on a mountain bike. But note, there are bikes out there that dwarf this one in both features and in cost. But anything more than this, for me, at least for now, would be diminishing returns. So what do I love about the bike? Well, first the drivetrain. Those 11 speeds are perfectly geared for my riding style. And that Fox air fork with its 150 millimeters of travel, I love it, and I have it perfectly dialed in. I also love the ultra traction that I'm getting from the tubeless Maxxis Minions. And of course the rear suspension. And even though I'm awkward with it right now, the hustle and flow settings I really like and I see a lot of future potential with. And I like this pivot system. It's well designed and it's well built, and it comes together in a super smooth ride. I couldn't get a clip of this on the trail because I didn't want to clamp a mount down on the carbon frame, but here's why things are so smooth and controllable. And that drop test I was talking about earlier, where the bike practically sucks itself to the ground. There's almost no bounce. What I don't like. Number one, I'm having a few pedal strikes, though I think much of this is due to more aggressive riding. And while I like the idea and the weight savings, I do not like all the new marks on my $1,500 wheels after every ride. And speaking of marks, there are already a few on the carbon fiber guard and on the all mountain style down tube protection. And that's about it, and that's having to nitpick. Everything else makes this the best bike that I've ever had. And it's KevCentral orange, so clearly it was made with me in mind, right? You'll be seeing this bike more as I hope to be riding it regularly, but it doesn't make me want to avoid big box bikes or more affordable bikes. If anything, it gives me a new respect for them, because I can ride a cheaper bike into the ground and replace it at will. Replacing this, an unplanned 6K, that's a whole different story. But it is amazingly awesome. What do you think about it? Be sure to comment below and let me know. And thanks for watching another KevCentral bike video. Be sure to have a great day.